Okay, shall I start the day? It's fresh. Um, well, I'm gonna introduce to you what we're gonna do today. My name is Jonathan, and together with Lara, we have been organizing this Feeding Cities conference. We're very excited to start the day and want to welcome you. Thank you already for joining. Um, Before I dive into the content of today, I wanted to share with you some house rules. We would just to like we would like to let you know that this event is recorded. Um, so just that you're aware, it will be published on the FUSILLI website. FUSILLI is the project, the EU-funded project that this conference is organized under. Um, then we would like to ask you, if you're not speaking during presentations, to keep your microphones muted, just so to have a smooth experience. Um, and we also wanted to ask when we'll have parts, more interactive parts with Q&As, whether we can be mindful of letting others speak, finish their sentences, but also that we reserve the space for reacting to the content, just the same with the chat. Um, okay, well, thank you very much. Um, Welcome again. It is our pleasure to be hosting this conference today. I would just like to give you some background information before we dive straight into it. Um, Feeding Cities is organized as the second edition by the FUSILLI project. The FUSILLI project is a project for urban food planning and urban food system transformation. There's 12 cities involved in Europe. And last year we organized the first conference. And the whole idea was to get an international perspective from people in similar projects, from people working in similar fields across Europe and beyond, to set an action research agenda. So really to understand what across Europe are challenges people are facing and what questions might we need to ask ourselves um, to address those challenges. And these four main themes arose out of this conversation. So there were challenges related to politics and bureaucracy, funding and projectification, challenges related to stakeholder engagement, and food sustainability versus economic growth. And as well, in this conference, for each of these challenges, we identified a couple of pathways or kind of seeds for change. So what kind of things are already happening in the world, or what are really important avenues to explore further? And so for each of the challenges, participants gave a lot of examples related to, for example, advocacy and social movements, finding ways to have self-sustaining independent processes and initiatives, moving from stakeholder engagement or participation to forms of stewardship, ownership, and having needs-driven approaches, being responsive to stakeholder needs. And for the fourth one, kind of exploring degrowth alternatives. So food commons were talked about a lot, using procurement as a leverage to stimulate alternative kinds of agriculture. So there was a big mix in these conversations between kind of large-scale topics, structural challenges, but also more specific examples or kind of ideas of what can we do. Um, in this second edition, we would like to focus, and this is the way that we've set it up, um, to move kind of from challenges and possible pathways to explore a bit more concretely what are seeds of change. So these two questions that are here on the screen, they were kind of our overarching questions for today. How is food system transformation already continuously happening in the world? So what is, let's say, out there in the world? How are people actively uh, working towards transformation? And maybe the second, a bit more critical question is, are we working or interested in food system transformation, sustainable food systems? Are we doing enough for actual systemic change? So it's kind of a critical reflection questions that we hope can stimulate discussions. Um, yeah, so far for today. Um, this is the agenda. We're going to start with a presentation, interactive presentation, Building Bridges to Social Movements for Radical Reimagination of New Food Systems by Emma Haske from the Foster Food System Project. Then we have two presentations from Emira and Giorgos. They are Living Lab coordinators and work together with and as part of municipalities in Rijeka and Athens. And we will close the day with lively small group discussions, which we're using a rough kind of facilitated method for to have kind of intimate online space, talk about share our own experiences related to these topics that we discussed during the day. We're really excited, and again, I wanted to thank already before we go more into it the speakers. Also, you'll see a couple of organizers doing different things today. So it's me and Lara. Then we have technical support from Kanija, Alperslan, and Nida. So thank you also for that. And then we have additional moderators joining us for the lively discussions at the end, which are Ella, David, and Marjoleine. So thank you up front. And you'll at some parts of the day might see more of these people. All right, I think that's it for now. Then Emma, I would like to ask you to, if you want to introduce yourself, and you can take it from here. I can stop sharing and you can share your own screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Can you see my screen already? Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Yes. Hi, Jonathan also already introduced me a little bit. My name's Emma. I'm a colleague of Jonathan. I work at the Athena Institute at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam. And I'm an anthropologist and development sociologist by background. And I write my PhD about affective solidarity and emotional reflexivity in food system transformation. And I'm also embedded in a European project, and that is Foster. And Foster focuses on integrating heterogeneous perspectives in knowledge and innovation system. So it's about how do we exchange knowledge for food systems, whose knowledge is integrated, and what systems promote these knowledge exchanges. But today I'm going to talk about something completely else, well, more or less, and that is about social movements and radical change. And before we start, I would like you to log into the Mentimeter. Scan the QR code. And then I will ask you a few questions to first get to know you and to open up the discussion a little bit, because I will be talking a lot and I want to, I also want you to talk more. Let me know if that works or if someone has problems logging into this. Okay.
Someone in the chat is asking if there's also a link.
A link, you can go to menti.com and then you can type in the code that is written on the top of the slide. So you go to menti.com and then you type in 63406215. All right, I'm gonna. Yeah. Okay, so we already see some seeds of change. We have health, economics, climate change, awareness, nice, collaboration, understanding, involvement, degrowth, democracy, nice, a lot of different things. Urbanization, perception, radical alternatives, cool. Solidarity, very nice. Resilience, there's still things coming up. Is there anyone who would like to share something? No, we still need to wake up. That's also fine. Then let me see how we can move on to the next one. Can you go, do you see the next one now?
Yes.
Perfect, cool. So the next question is to get to know where all of you come from. Where are you embedded? We have science, business, academia, NGO, governments, university, more university, banking, society. Nice. Oh, applied research, EU projects, cooperatives. Yeah, so quite diverse setting of people today here. That's great. I see that not everyone has answered yet, but I think we get an idea. I'm going to move on to the more juicy questions. And based on those questions, I'd like to start a discussion then. So maybe think about why you answer what you answer and be ready to share if you want. And these questions are about radicalizations, and I'd like to know your thoughts, and you can slide the thingy to if you agree or if you strongly disagree, if you're in favor of radicalization for whatever that means to you, if you consider yourself radicalized, and if you want radical food system transformations. Okay. We do want radical food system transformations. We're not radicalized, or we're a little bit radicalized. And we're a little bit in favor of radicalization. While we wait for the others to respond, is there someone who would already like to explain their choice?
For the first question, it feels a bit more personal, or and the second as well. So in relation to your own social environment, whereas the third is more systemic. I thought it really depends on the social context you're in, whether you consider yourself as radical. Compared to my colleagues, not compared to my family life, like where I was born. I guess yes.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, that already shows that radical is very contextual. No, it depends on whom you compare yourself to, which makes radical food system transformation, of course, a bit tricky, because then contextual to what, right? Like if it's systemic, but we will get there. And interesting also that you see it as a personal thing rather than an thing you experience at work, or that's the first thing your mind goes to. I find that also interesting.
It reminds me of endless discussions with, for example, my parents when I was younger.
Yeah. Because they would say you're too radical.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you set boundaries around yourself, or be strict to yourself by, I don't know, eating in a particular way, or preventing waste in a particular way? So those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Relatable. Is there someone else who would like to share? Maybe someone who puts yes to radical food system transformation and a stronger no to in favor of radicalization, or a stronger no to I consider myself radicalized? No? Okay, maybe then I will start sharing, and then we see if that sparks some thoughts at the end of my presentation. But first I have one more, I think. Yeah. What is your relationship to social movements? Do you consider yourself part of a social movement? And are you connected closely to social movements? Okay. I think with both answers, we see a very big diversity, answers on all kinds of, on the whole spectrum, just like with radicalization. Okay, cool. Then I will start telling you a little bit about what I think about radicalization and why I think it's the seed of change for food system transformation. And I will start with the definition of radical. Radical actually comes from the Latin word radic or radix. Radix, my Latin's really bad, which means having roots. And that makes radical change about going to the origin or the essential. What the essential or the origin is, or if there is such a thing, of course, that is debatable and depends on what we're talking about. But I think it's about the thing that we consider essential at the very moment, or that we consider the origin of something at that very moment. Something I would say we consider the normal or the norm, the things that are invisible that we don't even see anymore because they became so normal. I would say those are the roots if we talk in terms of system transformation. What does that make radicalization about? In my experience, radicalization is often portrayed as something negative, violent, extremist, or threat, especially in the media. And so are people that are radicalized. They're also often portrayed as a threat, as a terrorist, as violent, as extremist. But what radicalization actually means, that's very ambitious. There is not one definition of radicalization. And especially when it comes to the endpoint of what radicalization means, where do you radicalize towards to? There is a lot of discussion also in the academic literature, and that's especially about if that has to be violent or not. Can you radicalize without ending up in violent behavior? So it's a matter of, is radicalization always behavioral, or is it also cognitive? Can you also just radicalize in a cognitive way, just by changing your thoughts? Yeah, and being radical means opposing what is normal, as I just said, what is moderate or mainstream, and it can even go down to questioning the core values of a society. And I want to give an example of my research that I did for my master thesis, where I did research about radicalization in a social movement, and that is the movement of Waldstadtasphalt in Germany. Waldstadtasphalt is a movement of activists who occupied forests. Two forests, but mainly one, doesn't matter. And they built tree houses to protect the forest from deforestation because the state wanted to, or is now building a highway. And they cooperated together with a citizen initiative. So it was activists who did come to the forest from different cities, from all over Germany, also from Spain, from other countries. And around the forest, there was already an active citizen initiatives of villagers who lived around the forest, who who were active against these plans of that highways since, I think, 1960s, so for a very long time. And what I saw there in my research was that both the activists and the citizens, whose ages ranged from 40 to 80, they experience behavioral or cognitive radicalization, and some both. So it can be both. And that is because some people might radicalize extremely in their thoughts. They, through experiences of police violence and seeing that the state is not listening to them, or the way that social media portrayed them, stigmatized them, put them down as eco-terrorists, they really started losing trust in the state. They started losing trust in the system. They really started questioning everything and became very critical and deviated from the norm, right? So they really de-rooted their thoughts on that they first had on society and on Germany, and completely had a new political agenda. So I would say that is a process of cognitive radicalization that both the activists as well as the villagers who used to vote for the Christian party for 60 years are now experiencing. And not all of these people who experience this cognitive radicalization also radicalized in a behavioral way. Not all of them climbed on the trees or built barricades. Some just brought tea, right? So I saw that there's both. We have behavioral and cognitive radicalization, and the assemblage of both forms the movement. Yeah, and then I come to my definition from that. And my definition that I follow for radicalization is that it's a process in which an individual or a collective undergoes a cognitive or behavioral, so either way, transformation, causing their ideas, beliefs, norms, or actions to increasingly deviate from what is considered the norm in a specific context. In Cuba, and you believe in communism, that might not be very radical. If you go on the streets to fight for communism in Germany, that's considered radical. So the context is very, very crucial here. Yeah, so that's the definition of radicalization that I will follow for throughout this presentation. But at the end, we can open up the discussion about radicalization and food system transformation. And maybe you say, I don't think this is it, and you have a better one, or you have your own one, and we all have a good one. That's also fine. So yeah, then if radicalization is about deviating from the norm, what is considered the norm in the context of contemporary food systems? And maybe to trigger the discussion this time a bit more, what makes you the angriest or the saddest? Is there someone who would like to say how they perceive the norm in the current food system and what makes them angry about this? No one's angry? We're all good.
I can go.
Yeah, please.
I didn't put my hand up. I'm struggling today with technology. So I don't know if you can see me or hear me, I hope, maybe.
Yes.
More or less. I'll see. The phone is stuck. So what was I going to say? In terms of how I see the norm in at least in Europe for our current food systems, I think there's a high use of pesticides. There's quite a lot of overproduction, over farming, over cultivation of spaces, right? So kind of really exhausting the resources that we have. I think that there are probably still some terrible conditions for many animals as well. And I guess this kind of what makes me angriest is the fact that we overproduce in so many ways, and yet, you know, half of the world's population doesn't have enough to eat. Now, don't quote me on those figures, right? I'm sure that's probably not the case, but there are a lot of people who are starving around the world, and a lot of places where there's an extraordinary amount of food waste and overproduction of food. So that makes me angriest.
Thank you. That makes me angry as well. Other people who share that anger or who maybe have something to add?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I would like to say, actually, yes, you both are right. I think the major problem is with the food distribution system and our food value chains and the people's ability to buy that. So, although sometimes I'm working on, I'm a doctoral researcher, I'm working on the shocks which affect agri-food supply chains. And a lot of times, in some of the case studies, I have seen that in the face of a certain shock, in some countries, if the food prices go up, people can still buy because of their strong buying power. For example, if £1 goes of a certain food commodity goes £1 up here in the UK, people are still going to buy it. It won't affect them a lot. But if £1 goes up in somewhere in South Asia or in Africa, that is a lot, because over there people's daily earning is £1 to £2 or maybe $1 to $2. So that and a more than half of a major portion of that earning goes into their daily food buying. So that is actually, these are the underlying challenges which needs to be addressed in a more holistic and comprehensive way. So yeah, so this is extremely important. Although we have enough food already there, but the problem is with the distribution and people's access to the food. So that is something which needs to be considered in this, if we especially in the food security context. So yeah, anyone else would like to comment on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we hear also inequality. which makes you angry, that there's inequality when it comes to how food is distributed. If I hear you correct.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
Anyone else who would like to share or comment? Oh, now I see a hand. Vincent Furlan.
Exactly. Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more with what has been said previously, but if I want to keep like a European view on that, is how we are told that the food we eat is safe, but at the same time we consume a lot of food that is grown with pesticide and contains a lot of sugar and other types of additives that have also bad consequences on our health. And what angers me the most is that every time you want to bring some change, you have this quite common discourse that you want, if we change the system, it will create employment and we won't have food enough on our plates. And it seems that change is not feasible if we listen to the big companies that make their profits on top of these discourses and how the food system works.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, now you're already saying something very important, and that is a narrative behind why the system is the way it is, or a dominant narrative of why the system is the way it is right now, right? And also why it is hard to change it, and that is because we want to promote economic growth, and there's this idea that only with economic growth there's job security and there's development and so on. So you're already mentioning something very important. I will get back to that, but first, Emira.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Just one thing that I think kind of connects to everything that was said. Yes, pesticides are a problem. Yes, overproduction is a problem. Wrong way of producing food is the problem. But I think, and what we're seeing here specifically, that the issue is that we are not questioning the norms, or we don't have a systemic way of teaching people to question the norms from their early age. So teaching kids in schools that this is not something that's given, that this could be changed, and maybe they could be the ones working towards the change, maybe even making other new jobs for a scientific approach or anything else, or activistic ideas, because I don't think that we're sort of accepting everything and saying yes, it's bad and yes, it's wrong, but we are not systemically working towards teaching people how to change things. So maybe in that sense, I think that angers me the most, because we're talking about, yes, so it's wrong, something should be done, something should be done. But when it comes to the point who has to do it and how it's going to be done, then there's kind of a issue with responsibility, I think. So maybe teaching people to be responsible from a very young age could maybe lead to a better change, bigger change.
Thanks you. Yeah, and I also hear awareness, right? Responsibility, and you mentioned first they have to become aware of seeing that norm and being willing, like also maybe seeing alternatives to know that that's
exactly
just one norm, the norm now, that is not a given, that is unchangeable. It's just the way it is now. Yeah, and then with the awareness should come responsibility. Very nice. Yeah. Any more hands? Otherwise, I will move on. Okay, yeah, thanks for sharing. There was already a lot of things said, and I think we already touched some roots, maybe. And that could be those narratives, but also, yeah, the idea to question norms. We're already moving in the direction of radicalization, aren't we? Okay. So I would also say that we're all here together now. We see a lot of EU projects funded to change food systems. We see that the government or some governments are talking more and more about the need to transform food systems. So I would say the realization that food systems contribute to crisis, but also are in crisis or are experiencing crisis, right? That is becoming a new norm. Us sitting here together working on change is the new norm when it comes to food systems, because we even see the big actors. We see Unilever and other actors. We see even them saying, yeah, something needs to change. So the narrative itself that food systems need to change, that in itself is not radical yet, because that is the new norm. And what we see in most EU projects and also narratives of governments is that what needs to change is that we move to more sustainable and healthy systems from farm to fork, right? That's a very, very common thing to say. And then food security also, of course, is another very common slogan or narrative or word. But does that mean we are derooting? Are we derooting because we're now all busy with the system transformation, or do we need to do something else to actually make it radical? So I have an example of what I see happening sometimes of projects or things that are not derooting, and that is if the roots are still in line with the narratives of efficiency, of economic growth, of competition, individualism, techno-optimism, because I would argue that that is the norm right now, that we have, especially in Europe, but also in many, many other countries. It's hard to say that it's a global norm, but it's a very dominant norm, this framework of thinking, no, that we need economic growth, and that's the only way forward, and we need development, and we need progress, and we need to compete for that because competition stimulates progress, and the individual needs to compete with each other and against each other, and that should be as efficient as possible. So that's a very dominant narrative that we've seen for quite some years now. And if you build a new project on these roots without taking these roots out, and for system transformation, then we have outcomes or fruits such as green capitalism, greenwashing. We still reproduce inequalities, the same inequalities that were there before. Like we just heard, there is big issues of food distribution. It's not about there being enough food. It's about how do we distribute the food that is there. And if we build our fruits, or if we build our new solutions on top of these same roots, then the people that have benefited from the old system will be the one benefiting from the new system. So instead, we need to deroot, we need to radicalize, and we need to deviate from those norms. We have to pull out these roots in order to plant new seeds of change, right? And now we're back at the topic of today's session. We need to be able to plant these seeds of change. And I don't know if you are all into gardening. I once was asked to pull out the roots of mint in a big garden. It was full of mint. I don't know if anyone ever had problems with mint. It grows like crazy and the roots are everywhere now. If you have a garden like that, you can try to plant a new seed and change something in your garden. Nothing's going to change. You first have to pull out those roots of that mint. And that's really hard work. Plus, you first have to know they're there because they're also very tricky. You don't necessarily see all of them, right? It's really hard work. And I think I would urge all of us, urge you, urge me, urge us change makers to really, really look and dig for all of these roots. And then we can plant new seeds, and maybe with these seeds, we get new roots, which could be more of collaboration. We already saw that when we had Seeds of Change, when I asked in the beginning for Seeds of Change, someone said collaboration, someone said degrowth. So I think we already share some ideas of what the new roots should be, right? Collectivity, circularity are some roots that I added that I would like to see. And then we can have new fruits. We can have actual radically different systems. What they will look like, I don't dare to imagine right now, but maybe we have time to imagine together later. Yeah, so this is a bit how I see radicalization as the process of derooting and why I think it's necessary. And I'm curious to hear now if you have examples of where we plant new projects or new solutions on the same roots. Can you think of examples? No? Okay. Any comments on this or any thoughts?
We have one comment in the chat. Everywhere, I'm afraid.
Everywhere. You still see the same roots everywhere. Okay. Is there anyone who, then maybe the other way around, is there someone who sees places, spaces, contexts where these roots are pulled out? Evans?
Yeah, thank you. This is Mr. Evans Mswahili from Kenya. I'm coordinating what we call the Lake Region Food Systems Network. Some of the roots that I'm seeing here are like the kind of, petrochemical fertilizer subsidies that are so much entrenched in our countries, like for in our case in African countries, you realize that so much investment and so much focus goes into subsidizing methods of farming and interventions that don't really transform the food system to the better. So for me, from where I stand, I look at those as some of the roots that we really need to work on and be able to transform our food system.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I think that's a really good example. Are there other examples or someone who can relate to this?
We have a comment relating to this in the chat that says, gosh, yes, subsidies keep the roots entrenched, also in the EU, from Natalie.
Subsidies, yeah. Can you, do you want to share a little bit and explain?
No, I know, not much more than that. I think the previous speaker, said it all. There's still crazy things happening in Europe where we protect certain, let's say, certain types of production and subsidize them when, perhaps they're not the right ones. They're no longer kind of time appropriate. So that definitely keeps all the roots entrenched, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And are there examples of places, spaces where people already digged out those roots, or where you see new roots? Nothing? Come on, there must be at least one example. One good example. Okay. All right, then I will.
I can.
Yeah.
I think some of the movements that we're seeing towards kind of more local food supply. So you see that where I live in Geneva in Switzerland, and I see that the local supermarkets will have pictures of the local farmer who supplied, I don't know, cabbage or lettuce or whatever it is, or the bread. So even I guess, and they're quite big retailers, right? They're national retailers, but they're still focusing on some kind of local things. So that's trying to start the movement to raise an interest in kind of more local production, right? And a closer relationship with our food, rather than just faceless, nameless producers of things that we eat.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. A good example, local food production. I also saw that Jonathan raised his hand. Do you want to share?
Yeah, of course. I was just thinking, myself, I find it really difficult to come with examples, because being a devil's advocate, kind of having that perspective, it's easy to come with examples, but then I think, but it's still kind of embedded in like dominant roots, for example. So even if there's alternatives, then like, okay, but yeah, maybe they're super dependent, or maybe the funding they get there from, or they're still. But then the example which I was thinking of is, for example, this farm really close by to Amsterdam. It's called the Maint, I think, or yeah, I forgot what it's called, like forgot the English words. Anyway, it's a farm that has been bought, and the land has become public. So it's an investment done by a philanthropic enterprise, or philanthropic thing. I think it was a church, and then it completely operates so it completely operates in an alternative space. So because there's no investment needed for the land anymore, because there's no debt that's accumulated, because there's like because it exists kind of outside of that economic system of debt and financial and investment, it is able to have have low distribution costs. It can be run as a kind of charity. So it's such a core fundamental thing that I know many farmers in the Netherlands are struggling with, getting finance getting financed in a way that's attractive, that's not too expensive. And once that's done, a lot is actually possible. But yeah, I know at least in this context, that's a really big, stark difference.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and now you said what you said already a bit of the fruits that they have, right? But you talked about the means, right? Yeah, the means are also. I'm thinking of community-supported agriculture farms or the agroecology movement, the La Via Campesina, all these movements. If you look at the roots, they follow different narratives, and I think that's where I would like our thinking to go now, to these actual roots, that you move away from wanting economic growth, which is really hard if we're all competing for funding, but that you still have to try to still grab the roots and ask yourself what new roots there would be. And if you look at agroecology, for example, it's much more holistic, right? It's humans with non-humans, the entire environment, everyone together. They try to build down hierarchies. They try to have a much more collaborative framework, I'd say. But yeah, I will move on and we will get to that again. Just quick check. I have till 10:30.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm skipping this. Okay, I wanted to give 2 examples, but I think we already got it. One is the women's suffrage movement, which I think isn't new to anyone, so I don't have to explain too much. But in the early 19th century, women were fighting for their right to vote, right? And back then, these women were seen as radical, as radicalized, as a threat. And of course, their idea of wanting rights when in a society where they didn't have rights was radical. Nowadays, if you would say women shouldn't have rights, you're radical. So I think we're very happy for these radicalized actors. The same example is the anti-war movements and the Vietnam War protests in the 1960s. In 1964, only a small group of students, intellectuals, artists, and activists started sitting on campuses demanding the end of the war. They were called crazy, they were criminalized, they were arrested, they were called radical, terrorists, extremists. Only 4 years later, 50% of the population of the United States disapproved with the war. So that's how fast our norms can change, and it always starts with these small groups of radicals that demand change and grab the roots earlier than others, maybe. So I'm saying this to urge all of us, even if we even for those that already considered themselves radical, but also for those who didn't consider themselves radical, I urge you to rethink the way we think of radicals and to rethink the way we think of those actors we consider radical. Because if we look back in history, I think we're very happy they were there. At least I'm very, very, very grateful they were there, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here speaking. So yeah, the perception of radical actors in social movements was always very negative, and they were judged a lot. And if we follow this way of shaming people who think differently, they might cut off their thoughts and flowers. And these are exactly the thoughts and flowers that we would need for transformation. So I urge you to really rethink the way that we react to people who say something radically different than ourselves. However, that's very hard because most of us are in institutions. And institutional change is, according to the literature, one of the most resistant forms of change, because in institutions, there's very fixed rules, practices, and narratives that make it very hard to question them, because there are certain forms of sanctions if you do so. So if you, for example, mess with a formal rule, of course, there can be actual punishment. If there's a formal rule and you don't follow the rule, you can be punished. But if you even break one of the practices, the typical practices, the things that people just typically do in the institution, you can face social isolation and disappropriation. Or if you say things differently, follow different narratives, people could be ridiculed, and you could be incomprehensible. People might not follow you, and people might just not agree with what you say, and for that you might have to isolate or feel isolated. Because if we start in institutions, usually the expectation is that we integrate or even assimilate into that existing culture of the institution. And if you're new somewhere, that pressure is even higher, right? You first have to build you have to fight for your position in that institution. But that's why the history of institution, it just keeps repeating itself, and these institutions are very resistant for change. and most of us are embedded in institutions. So on top of all these other things you already mentioned, how do we get funding? How do we maneuver in a broader structure that is in a certain way, even though we want other routes? I think a lot of times if we are in institutions for too long, we don't even see these routes anymore, because we are forced to integrate and assimilate into the existing cultures to the extent that the existing culture becomes invisible for us. We don't even see anymore what we are reproducing. Like we heard earlier that we need to teach people to see that the norm is just one norm and it is changeable. But I think the longer we maneuver in existing norms, the harder it is to see these norms. And that's especially the context in institutionalized settings. I bet that's relatable for many of us. But what to do with this, right? Now I'm being very negative. I think one way of solving this is to build bridges with social movements, and that's about solidarity. And just real quick, solidarity means that you form a kind of unity or mutuality. You share mutual responsibilities. You share mutual struggles. You want to create a feeling of collectivism and share struggles and purposes. And that is already against these existing roots, right? Because these existing roots are competition and individualism. Now we're talking about collaboration and collectivism. And how do we do that? That doesn't mean that all of us have to go on the street and talk to people from social movements. But it does mean that we have to rethink the way we think about radicalized others, because they can actually open up our imagination. Because their norms, beliefs, and ideas are already deviant from the norm. That's why they are radicalized. So if we want to challenge ourselves to challenge the way we see the norm that is right there, talking to people that are deviant from the norm can open up our imagination and make us aware of what is even there and how we might still reproduce the norm to a certain extent. That can be super uncomfortable. And, you know, there has been a lot of discussion about cancel culture and all these things, not for nothing, but because feeling called out or feeling like you work towards change and then realizing, hey, maybe I'm reproducing a certain norm, that's painful. But I think we shouldn't stop this painfulness or this fear from actually reaching out to these radicalized ideas and realizing where we can do better. And as I said, that does not necessarily mean all of us have to go to the streets, although that would be awesome. It also means listening to radicalized narratives. It means following knowledge looking for information and knowledge products like zines, articles, videos, films, speeches, trying to really understand their struggle and purposes, and questioning our pre-assumptions and stereotypes about these radicalized actors. And ask ourselves questions like, how do they organize? How do they facilitate? How do they handle decision-making processes, participation? And then from there, if our imagination is opened, if we see new routes, because I think there are already new routes in this world, in small places, in communities, then these roots we can try to plant in our own institutions little by little. But first we need to see what roots are there. First we need to be able to imagine them. And when I just asked you, are there already other roots, there was more or less silence, right? So I think we do have a need to open up our imagination towards that. And here's some examples. You have the Food Autonomy Festival here in the Netherlands that is organized by social movements where people do share radicalized ideas. You have events where these little magazines that you see, those are zines from people from social movements who produce their knowledge and their information. You have workshops, you have other events, you have toolboxes, you have, here you see the anti-oppressive facilitation toolbox, very nice tool to question ourselves, how do we handle dominance and hierarchies in our institutions. All these things are knowledge products and radicalized ideas from social movements, from spaces that already derooted our system or their way of working and thinking. Yeah. And now I want to go back to the Mentimeter for the last 7 minutes and see if I radicalized you. No, but if maybe your ideas of radicalization changed, and maybe if now people would like to share what they think about radicalization, but also if you think that's necessary that we open up our imagination in institutions, or if you think that's not the problem. The problem is really the systemic constraints, and my imagination is opened up, but I cannot do anything in these settings or in these systems. Okay. If someone already wants to share while we're logging in, please
I
feel
think you
free.
need to activate it, because it says you haven't, in the Mentimeter, it says we can't. It's still got the old question.
Oh, yeah. Now, yeah.
Yeah. This is, yes, it's updated. Thank you.
Okay. So far, more people in favor of radicalization. Yay. And more people who consider themselves radical. That's also interesting. But we see more favor of radicalization than radicals. So we also see there's more need for us to radicalize, apparently. Someone who would like to share, maybe is there someone who changed their perspective a little bit, would like to share what made them change their perspective, or someone who would like to share? Share, please, just share. Yeah, Efrat?
Yeah, I think what was new for me is that the idea that in order to be radical, I don't necessarily have to go on the streets, but perhaps just expose myself to radical thinkers. So it kind of broadened the range of activities I can do in order to be more towards the radical side of the spectrum.
Yeah, yeah. I think you can be a radical anywhere, and I think we need radicals in absolutely every place of society, and we need radicals in the government. Because otherwise there's no change, right? We need people who de-root everywhere, and you're not just radical if you're among those that are seen as radical. Because these citizens in the forest occupation where I was, right? Those weren't the people sitting in the forest, right? Those were the people sitting in their houses who were 70, voted for the Christian parties their entire life. If anyone would see them, no one would call them the radicals. But their ideas and sometimes even their actions are just as radical as the people in the forest. But the people in the forest wear big piercings, tattoos, cut their hair off. They look like proper anarchists. And the people in the villages, they do not. And that's why we consider the anarchists the radicals and the villagers not. But it's not about that. It's about what you think and do. So I think you can be a radical anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
More thoughts?
Yeah, maybe I want to say that also for myself, you kind of like broadened the concept a little bit of radicalization. And I feel like a little kid now that wants to do something, right? But I come from a very different background. So I really want to see if this little kid could actually do something within my very, very different everyday life. But for sure it's inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I start with information and with rethinking, and then you can always see where you can redo, right? But I think it starts with rethinking. Thanks for sharing. Okay, the last one. Which food movements do you take inspiration from, or can you think of? I don't know if I can add myself. I would add La Via Campesina, Toekomstboeren. But maybe we can collect some if you know some. And if you don't know some, then we know we all should inform ourselves better about food movements. That looks like it. Okay, then I will stop sharing. But you do have Maybe I'll put some in the chat then later. But yeah, thanks for listening. I hope it was somehow interesting and opened up the imagination to how we can plant seeds and that we first have to pull out all the mint roots. Okay, enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Emma. Great, thank you for your presentation. Hi, I'm Lara. Jonathan already presented me. So first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I thought also it was really thought-provoking and inspiring, especially, redefining and rethinking what radicalization is, and connecting it more to the roots. And you also talked about, or you started with social movements and how they changed, like maybe what we used to see as radical into norms, but how difficult it is to see this in institutions. I think that kind of makes our link to what we want to talk afterwards, because in FUSILLI, I mean, most of we work with the municipalities and with the cities, and in that sense it is in a more institutionalized setting. So the next activity we have for today is part of, I'm gonna share my screen so you can also see the agenda. 1 second. Sorry for the delay. My Teams is a little slow.
No worries, no worries. I can also share if it, just let me know.
I'll try for 15 more seconds, and if it doesn't, maybe, yes, I don't know, I think it's sharing down. I don't know why it's sharing the. Maybe you can share slide 33 of our presentation.
Yeah, I can share. That's fine. There we go. Yeah.
Okay. So if we go back to the agenda, we will. The next event is part of a webinar series that has been kind of accompanying the FUSILLI project from the beginning. I think Jonathan already talked about the conference last year, which was also part of the series, but there's a series of 6 webinars, and this is like the second to last. There we can see, perfect. And till now, we always talked more about the challenges and how to overcome them. And we really wanted to kind of like talk a little bit more about this transformation, since the project is also kind of like coming to an end by the end of the year, talk about what is happening, what changes are happening. So with our 2 presenters today, we'd also talk about new initiatives, and thank you. And we will have Emira and Giorgos with us. First of all, I'm gonna present a little bit how the structure of the webinar works. So, perfect. Oh, I think the coffee slide, I don't know, it comes first in my, okay, perfect. So we'll have each presentation, and after each presentation, we will have 1 meditative minute. So when you see this coffee mug, as we call it, the eye-opener moment. So each of our presenters will present a question or a challenge they have been facing. And then you will see me the Jamboard slide. Perfect. A Jamboard that looks like this. We will put the link in the chat. And here on the left side, you will see this little sticky note. Sorry. And when you click there, like a sticky note will appear and you can write, it can be a comment, it can be something you want to share, it can be a question about the presentation. And then we will give a few minutes for that. And then the speakers will be able to choose like the questions to answer, and we also can have a more interactive discussion together after that. So then we will start with Emira. Emira, would you like to maybe also share your presentation and present yourself? Well, Emira is a researcher in sustainable urban development from Rijeka in Croatia, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. I'll speak about myself while I'm sharing the screen. So hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Like Lara said, my name is Emira. Can you see the presentation? Just ask.
Yes, I can see.
Okay, great. So my name is Emira, and I'm working as part of the Rijeka FUSILLI team. As Lara said, a lot of us is in the a part of the institution. So am I, a part of the city administration, and to change a system that has been functioning, I will say, for ages in the same way, not just only on the local level, but on the national level as well, is extremely difficult. And we are very lucky to have in Rijeka a very good and accepting group of people around us that really have, ears for what we're telling them. So my background, very hectic. First marketing, then smart city solutions and smart technologies for cities, and now food systems. So I have a lot of different areas that I've been working in, and a lot of different insights that I believe help me in these projects. So Rijeka, as part of the FUSILLI project and other projects that we're a part of, we have been addressing food waste through initiatives like the Food Waste Analyzer app and the Sustainable Cookbook that I'll be presenting today, with an emphasis on the challenges and the things we learned while working on these two ideas. A little bit about the city of Rijeka. We have a population of a little bit over 100,000 residents who are living in more than 63,000 housing units as of the 2021 census. And Rijeka is the basically administrative heart of a Primorsko-Goranska region of a county that is a bit bigger, and it's an urban, a very urbanized city. And what have we been facing during FUSILLI in general and during food waste and waste management and food system management in Rijeka are mainly people habits. We do face a lot of ingrained habits that are regarding food waste. And despite the economic crisis, food waste management really is not prioritized, not personally, not locally, and nationally as well. Waste separation still is not mandatory, and a fixed waste disposal fee, which is basically irrespective of the waste amount created, further discourages people to think about waste management on a personal level. In this year, at the beginning of this year, the city of Rijeka started to introduce basically a personalized waste collection system, which was implemented progressively across local communities. KD Čistoća, which is our waste management company, a utility company, started the process initially covering 5 local communities, and it's spreading forward to the city center. The waste management system, the new waste management system, will allow residents basically to control their own waste, prevent unauthorized use of containers, which is quite a big issue because you can just walk around the city and throw your the trash that you produce anywhere you want. And the system is expected to increase the quantity and quality of separately collected recyclable fractions of waste. Now, to facilitate this, users or citizens will be provided with designated waste containers. So either with a smart card that can be accessed either with a smart card or a key. And this will be done in 2 categories of buildings. First, family houses, and other is multi-residential buildings. And a very big challenge in Rijeka, as well as I think any other urban area in implementing this type of system, is managing the implementation in high-rise buildings and very large apartment blocks that we have an abundance of. The approach of the process is to start from the city outskirts and to move towards the center, so that we can ensure that the new waste collection system aligns with the new disposal methods that are also being introduced in the surrounding areas. Of course, the benefits of this new system are numerous. It encourages primary waste separation, which we don't really do right now, segregates the waste that can be recycled, and reduces the amount of waste that is currently being sent to the Marišćina Central Waste Management Zone, which is a landfill. It's a controlled and managed landfill, but still a landfill, which is definitely not good. And of course, the more the recyclable fractions will be separated on a primary level, on a personal level, the lower the bill of the user will be, as only mixed municipal waste is going to be charged for their bill. So the collection of waste paper, waste plastic, metal, and multi-layer packaging will be free. So people will be able to control their expenses a bit more. Now the app, the actual app that we are working on, what we're trying to do, and I mentioned this when I was talking, when I was reacting to Emma's presentation. I don't know if it's radical. I don't know if this idea is very radical. We're hoping it is. But the app is designed to try to change how people buy, how they consume, and how they dispose of food. Kind of like by encouraging a more thoughtful and systematic and planned approach to purchases and to spending money on food. The app helps users recognize their food waste responsibility and hopefully share experiences that can have that can later on drive broader societal changes thanks to social media and other media outlets that we can use. So the app, how does it work? The main function, or the primary function of the Food Waste Analyzer app, is to help users monitor their food management. By tracking purchases, consumption, and waste they are producing, the app aims to provide relevant data that we as the government are currently lacking. It tries to raise awareness about the amount of food waste people are often unknowingly, most of the time unknowingly producing, enhance control on a personal level, and educate users about food waste, basically. Now, how it works, it's very basic. I have to say this, it's very simple. This is still a web-based application. It's not a mobile application. You can open it on your cell phone, but it's basically a web-based application. And it works very simply. Users input the quantities of purchased food. If you buy 10 eggs, you enter into the system that you bought 10 eggs on that date. They record their consumption, and they record their waste and receive feedback on how much was actually used. The app kind of calculates the data, maintaining an online pantry for users and providing cumulative data for administrators. So what we try to do is, first of all, we try to predetermine certain things so that the users don't have to input everything. So the groceries are predetermined. They have a drop-down list to choose from. There is an option of users to input their own foods or groceries that maybe we forgot to put in the drop-down list. After someone uses an item from their pantry, so if you use 2 eggs, you will note that you used 2 eggs, and you will provide a percentage, which is an approximation. We don't know how to do this a bit more accurate, but still just an approximation of how much was actually used. So if you cooked 2 eggs for yourself and maybe you had leftovers and you threw that away, you will note that approximately you used 80% of those eggs and not 100%. So the app will then calculate the waste percentage that you produced. It will constantly monitor available quantities of items in your pantry. So how much stuff you have. Basically, it's an online pantry fridge type of an app. And you can access your data and see a graphic view of how much food you're throwing away. And the administrator has access to cumulative data of all users. Of course, we have GDPR to follow, so we only can see the cumulative data of all users that are included in the app. This is a bit to see the interface. It's in Croatian because most of our users are Croatian. So the app's interface allows users to very easily manage their food inventory and waste. So it's hopefully a practical tool that will be used on a daily basis. The app's features are designed to be very simple, not too demanding, user-friendly, and hopefully accessible, encouraging regular use and sort of better food management habits. These are the graphs that can be seen. So we are currently continuing to explore apps capabilities, but trying to emphasize the potential of the app to transform not just the whole waste management system, but to transform how users approach their food consumption process at home and, of course, their waste production process. The app not only tracks food waste, but also hopefully helps users develop more sustainable habits. So what were the issues and the challenges? And this I ask all of you to think about and maybe help us resolve them and maybe give answers. So when designing the app, one of the primary considerations that we had to keep in mind was determining how much data we actually need as government or researchers from our users. It is really essential to strike a balance between gathering comprehensive data that can be used and still ensuring that the process is still manageable and tolerable for the end user, and not to exploit their will to join us in this process and then just dump a lot of questions on them and ask a lot of information from them. The goal is to basically collect enough data to provide meaningful insights without overwhelming users with something that might be excessive as an input requirement. The app is designed with user autonomy in mind, offering a blend of pre-programmed features and customizable options. So what we pre-programmed, like I said, is the categories of foods you can input, then measurement units, also like kilograms, grams, liters, and so on. And a key feature of the app, and this is one of the reasons why it is so simple, both visually and content-wise, is that we wanted it to be usable for the hospitality sector. So we really need to monitor the waste produced in the hospitality sector as well. Croatia is a very tourist intense country. We have a lot of tourists, and the hospitality sector is a very large producer of food waste. So this is something that we hope to be able to copy as well on the hospitality sector. And hopefully the app will provide added value for users. So beyond just data collection, no one would use it if it was only that. It offers actionable insights based on the data they are logging, helping them understand their food waste patterns, maybe identify areas for improvement as well. And now we are working on something that we noticed in our previous work on FUSILLI and other projects, is that people react a bit more to the price than to quantities of the food that they are throwing, if that makes any sense. So, if you tell someone at the end of the month, oh, you threw away this many kilos of meat or this many kilos of fruit, they will not perceive that as if you tell them, okay, but you wasted 100 euros by the end of the month throwing all of this food. That sort of clicks a bit more in people's head, and this is something that we notice that has a bigger impact than just talking about quantities. And now what we're thinking about for future development ideas and prospects. And in the end, you can see this big letters saying platform and business model. As a city, we do have limitations in developing these types of apps, specifically monetizing the app. We can't really monetize it, so it has to be completely free for users, and really don't have a lot of ways to finance the app beyond just projects or EU-funded projects, but we're thinking about it. So what we're thinking as very good ideas and prospects that could be very good for our users is incorporating gamification elements into the app, integrating game-like features such as challenges, achievements, leaderboards. We can make the process of reducing food waste more interactive, more competitive, more enjoyable. Users can, for example, earn points for logging their food waste, completing specific tasks, or reaching certain milestones. And then those points can be displayed on different leaderboards that are publicly accessible, fostering a sense of competition and community among users, basically. Another key aspect of our future development is the introduction of a bonus program. The program can offer users different bonuses for specific actions, such as saving a certain amount of food from being thrown away or, again, reaching certain milestones. They could possibly receive discounts on groceries, maybe access to exclusive content, discounts on utility services, for example, and other city-provided services, etc., or other rewards that we can incorporate in the app. Something that is very interesting for us as well, but it's a bit more demanding in the technical aspect of the app, is implementing a barcode scanner into the app. This would sort of facilitate or make the process of entering the things people bought a bit more easier. They could just scan the barcode of an item, and then they could even get more information about each product, which could include a list of ingredients, nutritional content, date of packaging, date of expiration, and things like that. And the date of expiration is something very interesting because it could give us a lot of other properties for the app, like for example, prompts. The app could prompt the user to tell them that, oh, you have 3 eggs in your pantry. They are expiring in 3 days. Use them. Otherwise, you're going to have to throw them away. And of course, then there's the option of expanding the app to use AI features that could provide basically even recipe ideas based on the contents of someone's pantry. So the AI feature could see what you have in your pantry, what's about to expire, and offer you a variety of recipes that you could use all of this. So I think this would be a very next level. But again, searching for a platform and searching for a business model to do all of this. Now, the other thing, hopefully, I think you can already see it on the FUSILLI webpage, on the project webpage, is a cookbook. We decided to make a sustainable cookbook for 2 reasons. First of all, we like books. Second of all, we do have a lot of older, less digitally literate people who can't really use the app or won't use the app. So the cookbook kind of complements the app, providing recipes and tips to reduce food waste in the kitchen. It's now available digitally in English, and both digitally and in a printed version in Croatian. It features a variety of sustainable recipes, tips for minimizing food waste, very creative ways to use leftovers. It's kind of like a practical guide for anyone looking to make their cooking habits more sustainable. And we hope it will have a nice impact on our users and on our people. And hopefully you will cook some of the recipes from the cookbook. They're very simple. I made them. They're extremely simple. I'm not much of a cook. And just some things to think about maybe for the meditation minute. So we are going to have data from the app. We're going to have data about about how people treat their food waste. Now the question is, what do we do with it? We don't want it to stay just data that's not used. We need to use it, analyze it, maybe transform it into strategies or recommendations for systemic changes. The app development growth, what we see is potential partnerships with technology companies or startups that could take the app over from the city's hands and build on it, of course, with some type of cooperation from the city. And again, something that we're thinking about is integrating these food waste reduction strategies into basically broader urban initiatives with sustainability issues that we have all of these in our city, such as renewable energy production and sustainable transportation, maybe making it a bigger story, even a bigger picture, expanding on other things that are on our mind at this moment. And thank you and greetings from my team who couldn't be here today, but I'm here for any questions that you need. So thank you for your for the minutes you gave me on this project.
Thank you so much, Emira. Thank you for your presentation.
Just let me okay, I stopped sharing, right? Great.
Yes. So as I said before, I'm gonna also share the Jamboard link here in the chat for everyone. So we have our meditative minute, maybe also with the thought-provoking questions that also Emira shared with us. And we're also thinking we could maybe kind of like put it together with Emma's presentation we had before, and also think about how, if we think about food waste and food waste management in more of a systemic way, what are the roots maybe of that? Like maybe think about derooting also food waste and food waste management especially. So in that sense, maybe if everyone takes a minute, you can just go into the Jamboard and, as I said, like click on the little sticky note and just put wherever you want, like your thoughts or comments. If it's not working, if anything is happening, you can also share your thoughts in the chat. So we will read them to Emira after this few minutes, and then we can kind of have a discussion. You can also unmute yourself and share what you're thinking.
I see some questions in the chat. Okay, so the users, we are currently we're in the beta testing period of the app. If you've ever worked with developers and programmers, you know that it's a very demanding process. And we have about 20 users at this moment, and they're just following their daily routines and entering and using the app to see if they have any other feedback for us, something that might be a bit too complicated or something that is too simple or something they want to add. And at this moment, we are working on the prices entering the prices into the app. So a user, when they enter those 3 eggs or 10 eggs that they bought, they will also be entering the price of those 10 eggs. So here is the so that's what we're working on, and we have some programming issues with it that I don't really understand. I'm not a programmer, but they tell me it's a hard thing to do. So yeah.
So maybe Jonathan, could you share the
Yes, I'll do it.
perfect, the Jamboard? Do you have the link? Then I can see. As I said, if you have any direct questions, you can also raise your hand. The hungry for exchange. So the idea is also to have, we also have like another question in the chat. We have, are people motivated to use it? And when do you think it will be available for users?
So we hope it's going to be available. Well, basically it is available for users, but we still have to pinpoint some of the issues that we have, and we don't want to really put it out until these are resolved. So hopefully by end of September, beginning of October, we will be launching the app. And are people motivated? Well, the people that we're working on the beta testing are people who are from our very close circle. So yes, they're motivated. Hopefully, others will be motivated as well. But I think we're going to have a very strong promotional campaign to actually engage a lot of people, engage the numbers that we need to make it a important, you know.
We also have one comment here from Paula. She says, the biggest challenge with these kind of food waste pilots is the usability. The process is too demanding and difficult for users. For example, if you eat one slice of cheese from a package, is it possible to be that specific? Also, the experience from other countries piloting similar apps shows that users find the process too long and tiring and fail to upload all the necessary information to the app. How are you approaching these challenges?
We are trying to bring value to the app for the users in the sense of the gamification and bonus awards program. We are very much aware that people have a hard time spending time on something that they don't really have tangible results from. And basically in our citizens' minds, this is not something that's tangible because someone else's food waste or waste in general is someone else's issue for now. But with the new system in progress, so new waste management system in progress, where people will pay more if they produce more waste, this might be an incentive to help them sort of deal with their own habits and change their own habits. But yeah, a lot of promotion and a lot of hopefully some types of awards. And yes, we are planning on developing it into a mobile app because it's a lot more simpler, and it will be a lot more available if it's a mobile app. For now, it's just a web app.
Giorgos, you raised your hand. Want to say something?
Hi. In Athens, we have this experience that not directly as a municipality, that such a kind of application has worked very well as a university research project. So the university has found a good sample of households, along with an NGO that had a lot of members with WWF actually, and with a supermarket, seeing what is happening about food waste, and maybe how they can change behaviors through a sample instead of having it open to everyone. Thank you.
I'm sorry. So basically, I just see a question. I'm just seeing a question in the chat. Can you input if you only eat one slice of cheese from a package? Yeah, these are issues that we are very much aware of, and we're trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. Now, the idea is to be more aware of what you're throwing away, not as much as what you're consuming, if that makes sense. Because if you drink half a glass of milk, you can just know that you drank 1 deciliter of milk. It doesn't have to be completely accurate. But if you go into your fridge after a week and you see that you have a kilo of bananas that you forgot about and you're throwing it away, this is something that you should enter into the app. And this is what's important to enter into the app. Not so much what you, basically, yes. I mean, you have to be very much aware of what you're doing. And this is the biggest issue, that how do we make people waste their time, use their time to enter these things into the app? How can we make it worthwhile for them? And this is a very, very big issue. And this is why we think that without scaling it, without monetizing it, even program and things like that, it would be very small scale if we don't implement those kinds of incentives for people. But yeah, we have to change people's habits, and that is very difficult, extremely difficult.
So maybe we have 1 or 2 more minutes. We have a few comments here. I don't know if you can see them, Emira, on the Jamboard. If there's anything you wanna say regarding to those.
Well, streamlining data collection, scanning the receipts. Yeah, this is something that we are thinking. This is the barcode scanner thing that I was talking about. I don't think we can do it with receipts because our stores have very different systems. Some will display what you bought on the receipt, some won't. So a barcode scanner would be a simpler approach. But like I said, this is a development thing that we still need to access. And another thing that would be very interesting that we were talking about, I didn't mention it, is getting our hands on some open access data and inputting already prices of groceries into the app so that people don't have to enter the prices. Some of our stores have open API access to their price lists and things like that, so that could be also a way of simplifying the whole process in the app so that people don't have to input too many things inside.
Perfect. We have one more comment in the chat from Arlini. Two. If you want to also share by muting yourself, otherwise I can read it. Emira, if you want to read it and comment on it.
You're talking about the comment in the chat?
Yes.
Okay. So considering derouting food waste, I feel some internal challenges in hearing about the smart technology solution. A lot of food waste is caused by how the food system works, seducing citizens in their role as consumers to buy more than they can consume. And then if this app is for individual citizens, the importance of human dignity, the right to not be measured and monitored all the time, especially not by government or powerful companies. Have you ever struggled with these thoughts in your department? Okay, so the idea isn't to monitor anyone's actions. The idea is to motivate people to monitor their own actions. So the app hopefully won't just tell you that you're creating too much waste. It will tell you that you're buying too much, that maybe you don't need to buy so much. If you're buying kilos of apples and then you're wasting them half a kilo, then maybe you don't have to buy as much. So hopefully this will change habits of both consuming and both waste production. For the part that we are monitoring, we're only monitoring the cumulative waste that is being produced by people. So municipal waste, so food waste that we're being produced. And the reason for this is we don't have people who are in the FUSILLI project have heard this from me probably a million times. Croatia does not have, on a national level or on a local level, very good monitoring of the production of food waste. We don't know how much is produced. The latest research that was done was, I believe, in 2021. So this is the latest numbers that we have on food waste production. This is our way to get at least some insight into how much waste people are producing in household level and hopefully in the hospitality level. So no one is trying to reach into anyone's privacy or trying to minimize human dignity or anything that they're doing. People can do whatever they were doing before. Hopefully they will realize that they are doing something wrong, because if they're throwing too much, they will realize that they're throwing too much. So I don't believe that we are doing anything wrong with this. We'll see what the public will react. Of course, our beta testers don't have those issues for now, but like I said, we'll see. And oh my God, someone's on the bike while writing this. Please stay safe.
Thank you so much, Emira. I think if there are no further questions, first of all, thank you for your presentation. And I think we might go to the next presentation, and then in the end we can maybe also, regarding if we want to connect it with Emma's topic in the beginning, we can kind of like have a discussion together in the end. But Giorgos, maybe if Jonathan, you can share the presentation. Perfect. So You can just tell us when to change the slide, Giorgos, and we can move forward for you. Giorgos is an action researcher and practitioner in sustainable food systems, and also collaborates and works with the municipality of Athens in Greece. So I give you the floor.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
So I will follow from Emira's presentation. Some things are more or less the same. So, Jonathan, how would we go next? So obviously the city, the goal of the municipality of Athens is to into a sustainable one, which is not the case right now, which means next. So more or less now our food system looks like that. We have like 125,000 tons of food waste per year. We have a non-sustainable consumption model, and also our farming, I would say, is also not really sustainable, close to agrochemical intensive farming. Next, please, Jonathan. Athens has 7 million overnight stays of tourists per year, which amounts more or less to 20,000 tourists per day, including commuters and people who work in Athens and visitors from other areas around Athens. So it should be approximately 900,000 people per day in Athens, in a total area of 39 square kilometers, out of which the green area is almost 4 square kilometers. Next, please. Now, on food waste. The total food waste we produce in Athens is 315. 145,000 is food. Next, please. Actually, it's organic waste. Yeah, Jonathan, we can go on the next one. Of the organic waste, 125,000 tons is food, 4,000 tons is oils, and 10% is green stuff, you know, from trees and so on, and crops. Oils usually go to oil collection companies that recycle, upcycle the oil, so this is not a completely solved problem, especially for households. But with regard to restaurants, it's a problem that has been tackled with, and it seems to be working. With regard to food, and here we can go on the next slide, things are not so amazing. So in Greece, we produce around 193 kilos of food waste per year per resident. The same holds for Athens. However, this includes the food waste produced by restaurants, tourists, and so on. So in a research that was performed by Harkopio University, along with WWF and the supermarket Alpha, they have found out that an individual in an average household produces 87 to 90 kilos of food waste per year. Of this food waste, 30 to 40% could be saved and be used as food. It would be interesting to note in the waste bin next to it that 60 kilos out of this food is in a household is mostly vegetables and fruits. So there is something that we have to optimize in a way between how we consume and how to produce the least possible food waste, which is where this presentation is going to lead to. Now, the challenges we have then are, you know, twofold. One is on the prevention and managing surplus. So assuming that we could save 40,000 tons per year out of 125,000, it means that each resident would have to save 170 grams per day. And with regard to food going to waste, if this could be reduced to 85,000, of course we would solve 30% of the problem, more or less. Then we have to deal with it. And the challenges we face are pretty close to Rijeka's challenges. Waste separation is not mandatory and there is no fine if you do anything. Anyone can do anything, basically. Organic waste bins are not available in every neighborhood. In the neighborhoods where they are available, they are not available to every type of consumer. So in a way, we have followed, in Athens, there was an opposite approach to Rijeka. So it's mostly how to create economies of scale and to collect as much from the least users, from a small number of users, so that mistakes are not being made in how they manage food waste. So the focus was on restaurants and hotels, and actually through 700 large waste bins for organic waste, we have managed to collect in 2023 5,000 tons, which is a pretty good analogy. However, it needs to expand, and as food waste comes almost 50% from households, obviously the households are an essential part of it. And then it's the issue of how to use correctly the waste bins, because many times, they throw many different things, and then the whole bin instead goes to ordinary waste rather than to composting. Next one, please. So in terms of prevention, the advanced sustainable diets where food waste is reduced. In terms of management of food going to waste, it's how to separate it effectively, to take it to recycle like animal feed or composting, and to recover the food like energy production. All these things have been tried. None is really mainstream. We're in the process of mainstreaming, though. We shall see the timeline. Next one, Jonathan. Waste management. One thing that started this February was the placement of 150 large bins in neighborhoods for households, along with the distribution of small bins for household use, and a campaign on how to use the waste bins and how to, to follow the rules in a way. So this was really welcomed by the event has taken place. It started on February, so now around this time we're expecting the results to see how many waste is collected, if it's going correct or not, what needs to be improved. Next one. To do with FUSILLI, but not only. There was this focus on economies of scale, like placing the brown bins in hospital, restaurants, and hotels. There has been like a small alliance with 54 hotels in Athens to use the brown bins and to have a food waste management procedure the whole way from supply to end use. And this has greatly increased the amount of waste going to the brown bins. Plus, through FUSILLI, we have initiated a synergy with the Alternative Waste Management Department and the municipal nurseries, so that brown bins have been placed in all 67 nurseries. Which means that, again, we're betting on economies of scale at the institutional level. Next one. More or less, furthermore, there has been, and this has to do with changing mentality, that food should not be going to waste, but that it can be composted. So 100 composting bins have been distributed in schools so that children get to learn, and along with them their parents, that food is becoming compost and that it's not waste, it's a resource. Next one. It has started with the new mayorship, is that a website has been created on recycling in general, so it's for waste management in every aspect. Obviously, one of these is the food aspect, and there is a page specially dedicated to food on how to do it, where to find the brown bin, And next. So the result of the whole effort in Athens, which has started in very small steps in 2012, 2013, where the data was really, was then getting collected, is that there has been an increase from 2015 to 2023. So we started from, let's say, 200 tons of waste being collected and directed to compost. And eventually in 2023, 5,200 tons have been collected and directed to compost. In the last year, from 2022 to 2023, is this focus on institutional users and economies of scale in using food waste that has achieved this increase in the collection. However, we have to keep in mind that this is just 4% of the food waste we're producing. So there is a lot more to do in terms of food waste management. And here, I guess, is where the radical thinking comes in. Next one. One thing that has to do with the redistribution of surplus is that we estimate that around 50 tons of food that would go to waste is absorbed by Kiada, Athens Solidarity Center, so that along with the procurement that the municipality of Athens does to provide for the food security of residents in need, there is also food incoming from supermarkets and corporations that produce food that is distributed to residents either in the form of packages or like soup kitchens and meals. Of course, this is just part of it. The greatest job in Athens and in extended Athens, in Attiki, is done by civil society organizations and NGOs and from corporate CSR, where according to the data from Athens Food Bank, from Greek Food Bank, 1,600 tons have been distributed in Attiki, out of which 1,000 is in Athens. So this is the prevention side. In the next slide, we shall go into how we can move into a least possible food waste diet. And this is like a small project we did with FUSILLI in June. So we did this collective kitchen in cooperation with the municipal clinics and the Department of Preventive Medicine. Obviously, doing it with them had and has a focus on health. However, it was about sustainable diets and not healthy diets, because we wanted to introduce to the focus group that health is not just an individual thing, it has to do with the planet. So we introduced the One Health approach about it that comes from the UN. And there was this mentality that for the environment, obviously be nutritious, affordable for our pockets, otherwise we cannot do it, and to produce the least possible way. Made a menu in a way that that left zero food waste. Next one, please. In terms of shifting our culture to a zero food waste culture, zero is an exaggeration, to a least possible food waste culture in terms of food. One thing in Greece, at least, I don't know what happens to the West, but in many Eastern countries is this conspicuous consumption approach to food. We order as much as we can, and we throw as much as we can. But so we show that we can do it, that we have money, that we have social status, whatever. So this is happening in Greece, and it really has to change. This would save a lot, really. If someone goes to a restaurant, we would see that 25 to 30% of the food order is just thrown away. Then we passed the idea, we've spoken about that we don't have to buy more than the necessary amount of fresh products. We don't have to stuff our refrigerators and then let things just get rotten. We can buy food where everything is edible, and so in our menu we used sardines instead, let's say, of big fish. Because sardine leaves zero food waste, while, let's say, salmon or leave a lot more waste. And in fact, while in the Scandic countries they use sardines to feed salmon so that we can sell salmon and have a Nordic diet, let's say, and in Greece we try to imitate that. We wanted to mentality that buying fish that is highly nutritious at a price of 4 to 7 euros per kilo that can feed you for 2 to 3 days, you can also have zero waste with it. And the same can happen if we use seasonal products that can stand summer temperatures. So zucchini, cucumber, tomato works a lot better than green salads, for example. And the idea in this whole approach is to explore the most efficient combination of a diet that is sustainable for the environment and produces the least possible food waste. And this is important to see because research shows that an end consumer diet that produces the least possible waste is like an animal diet. If you eat a lot of meat and burgers and stuff, basically you eat the whole thing, there is no leftovers in case you eat the whole thing. While if you buy salads and potatoes and things, you have to clean them, to cook them, to do, and there is a lot more in quantity produced at the end of the day. So this could be a PhD thesis maybe to find the optimal diet that combines sustainability, health, and the least possible waste produced. Next one. Yeah, so this is just another image. It's our menu in the middle, but it's in Greek. So okay, it was seasonal salad using not tomato eventually, because tomato actually requires a lot of water resources and a lot of, everything was organic, but tomato in general requires. It was mostly cucumber and zucchini that requires the least possible. Sardines, spaghetti style from local varieties, and using instead of cheese and stuff mostly dry seeds, local again, that can have a great life storage and don't rot in the refrigerator. And next one. Yeah, so idea, and we got from the very quantitative aspect to a more qualitative one and to a more experiential one, not so technological, is how to induce to consumers the idea that they can change their diet and change their food culture in terms of a holistic way of viewing their diet. What we have seen from the questionnaire we did afterwards with the 15 people who participated in the focus group is that everyone eventually, of course, that was the focus of the workshop, but it also had its quantitative element and more theoretical element about One Health, sustainability, about how we can eat healthily so that we can keep our sugar levels down and lose weight. However, everyone eventually was really interested on the qualitative aspect of taste and cooking, and of knowing how they can use this experience to contribute to the food system in a positive way. So even though it's a very small pilot project we have initiated, it was really welcomed both by municipality staff and by the focus group of consumers. And we can keep this in mind in the sense that it could be useful either to accompany other actions or to be an action that is accompanied by other tools. And if there is a closing question that we have is, if we have in mind in our discussion group here a good practice that integrates all these different aspects in food waste. So thank you very much for the attention and your time.
Thank you so much, Giorgos, for your presentation. Well, the drill, it's the same structure. We will have an eye-opening moment, so 1 meditative minute to think about that. And I think hearing your presentation, I think we kind of like see a lot of kind of like new roots being kind of like put into the ground, and maybe we can also reflect a little bit on the presentations before. So I'll give you a little time in case you can't use the Jamboard. You can also write it in the Q&A or in the chat. and then we can have a discussion together.
Okay, so I hope it's working for everyone. If not, also feel free to put it in the chat. Just Laura, I can't see the chat, so if you let me know if someone puts something there, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah, we can already go into it. I actually had some questions, but Giorgos, they also relate a bit to the wider to taking it a bit broader. So and also relate a bit to the content of what Emma presented. So yeah, I can dive straight into that. But I want to thank you for the nice presentation, because I think what is really interesting about the way you presented this is that it's on the one hand quite a technical story, right? But it's you how do you say that? Contextualize it very strongly with the amount of food waste, the amount that is done by people, and then how it how then the waste bins add to that, but then also taking it again a bit more broader. So then what is then needed for kind of a social change? What is needed for people to be using the bins? What is needed to gain awareness, etc. And then again, the question you finalize with is good practices for integrated policy. So I think I'm appreciating that it dives into the specifics, but also takes it a bit broader. And actually, I was wondering, because you showed that it's right, so it's part of FUSILLI, but it's also part of the cities, work together with quite a lot of different partners. Food policy in Athens has also undergone quite some changes, while it's quite also strongly dependent on municipal action. So I was wondering as well, related to the question of good practices on integrated policy, if you can elaborate a bit on what kind of institutional challenges people have been facing in this project, or kind of maybe the institutional challenges you have been facing. And then I'm thinking particularly of the ones that Emma was presenting. She was saying, right, it was a bit anthropological concepts, but it was a bit like, okay, if you're working in an institutional context and you come with kind of a seed for change, something like this that you presented, people that try to do something different, they might experience punishment, isolation, or be ridiculed. Those were the things that she proposed. So I was wondering, maybe did you also experience these kinds of things, or do you know of people experiencing these kinds of things in a municipal setting or other institutional setting? Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that what Emma said about the radicalization in institutions and how practices can be either, how you say, exiled in a way, or I would say exiled. That would be like pretty accurate. Is something we have seen in Athens with, and not only, because food policy all over Greece is not really mainstream. So it's something that is happening. and sometimes, you know, they think that someone could be a bit a weird person, you know, because who cares about food? We have to eat. You know, we're not like Ethiopia.
Mhm.
We're not in Africa. We're not where people, you know, are starving to death. So what's the problem with you? And, you know, modern agriculture works. So what's the problem again? And so, you know, some people are seen like as like traditionalists. Maybe, I mean, this has, I would like to connect it a bit in mentally in terms of meaning. That sometimes being a traditionalist in terms of food is a radical action in Greece, and maybe not only Greece. So when people speak about cultivating in different ways or going back to traditional Greek diet, which is the Mediterranean diet that we don't follow anymore in Greece. You know, this sometimes is seen as really weird, and it faces this attitude of being exiled. Institutionally speaking, I would say the same holds. You know, institutions are an extension of larger society, and sometimes they reinforce what happens in society. However, there is one thing that is really interesting, that some people get really into it. So while at the beginning people can look at it in, you know, with a suspicious mind, let's say, when they see how citizens react to it and how residents are into it. So when we went to we participated in the seed saving festival, and they saw that, you know, at least 500 people came. They said, okay, here we have something. This is beyond, you know, being something radical in a way. This is mainstream. People want this thing, and we have to think about it and how we can start speaking about the whole thing. So, you know, you have to insist in a way, and this may have like a psychological burden or a professional burden eventually. But this is the way to, you know, to open the discussion, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope this answers your question, but if it doesn't, please tell me to elaborate more.
No, don't worry, don't worry. Yeah, thanks. Maybe also in extension to this, I was wondering, yeah, maybe I'll wait for that a bit. I had a question for both of you actually, Emira and Giorgos. In the meantime, my chat for some reason is not updating, so please, if anyone has something to share or a question related to either Giorgos or Emira or both, feel free. I think everyone is ready for the summer holidays. Dying in the heat. No, that's fine. So anyway, if anyone just raises their hand, that's fine. I can see that. I had a question for the both of you. To kind of take this idea of the roots and derooting, I think that was super nice and visual, and it really was one of the things that stood out for me in Emma's presentation. And I think also at the end she made it quite tangible, right? So, and that's also what she said at the end. So for many working in this institutional setting, whether it's part of a project, whether it's part of a municipality, there might be differences in the kind of roots that you're working with, the kind of roots that underlie your institution, but also then you try in these processes that are being transformative, or in this like a FUSILLI project that is says it about food system transformation, you try to deroot some things. But I was wondering if you could both maybe reflect a bit on from your presentations and from the work that you've been doing in these things that you're presenting. What do you think are the roots that you're working with? And yeah, I'm gonna ask that first, and then I'll have a second question after.
I can go first.
Sure.
I think we have two basic roots. that we're dealing with. One is the culture, and I think Giorgos will probably agree with this. Croatia is a Mediterranean country. We are a very hospitable people, and having food in abundance and offering food in abundance is something very important in our culture. You will not come to a lunch. Every mother will cook enough food for an army, even if she has to feed 4 people. That is very, very important. Another thing, I think very cultural as well, people don't really like to eat leftovers in our culture. This is just not a thing. You don't do that. It's not something that is regarded as a good thing. It's something that's like, oh my God, they don't have time to cook, or they don't want to cook, or it's not a good thing, even though for a systemic change, it would be a good thing. When it comes to government and the municipalities, this is just something that is, like I said before, we don't have enough awareness, even on the governmental level, of the importance of food waste and food waste management. Our country doesn't care about the statistics, which is very important, because if we do have statistics, we don't know where to move and what are the issues. So I think those are the two basic. I don't think that people don't want to change regarding the government, the system, but it's such a long process. It's a huge system. It's slow. It's there's a lot of paperwork. It's very bureaucratic, and so I think that's just there's a lot of things that have to change so that the outcome could be changed. Then, so the roots are very deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the system.
Yeah, very deep roots for
roots.
these initiatives. Yeah. Giorgos, would you like to explore as well some of the roots?
Yeah. So yeah, we also definitely cook a lot, and most probably no leftovers. Greek diet and Mediterranean diet was a starvation diet, basically. And that's why it was so healthy in a way. So it was a diet where not a lot, eat meat once a week, unless you're in the mountains, it's a diet that adopts to its environment. The more back we go. So after the so-called modernization and the Second World War, where people, lived with famine, they went from starvation diet to famine. People would die in the streets from not having any food. Having everything in abundance came out as a culture. And I think this year came to stay with us. So this is one route that we have to change. It's how to go back, not necessarily to a starvation diet, let's say, but at least to a diet that respects certain aspects about the need to adapt to our environment and not try to control our environment, which definitely has a sense of alienation from our nature, and it is a result of modernization. So this can become very theoretical. I would prefer to stop it here. I feel it's something we have to deal with. In this sense, we have this feeling is a radical action, or can become a radical action, both from farming to distribution, consumption, and to the way we cook. So this is one route we definitely have to deal with. And okay, this is a very personal. I believe tradition can become a very marketable thing. It can become a fashion. So we can use it, of course, not going to extremes, but tradition can be used in a very good way to change the way we act, and to help us to act in a different way. Now, there is also this challenge in roots. So what I've spoken about now was in general, as Emira did, the general context. With regard to governance, I really don't know how to say it. I don't know how it would for the governing institutions in Greece, from nation institutions to regional to realize that we have to change our food in a greenwashing sense. Not that everything becomes sustainable all of a sudden and we have this sustainability flag and this has solved the problem. It's the problem. I don't know how. I mean, if I had a solution, we would use it. Most probably. But I'm with Emira that we definitely need a change, and we definitely need to.
Yeah, thank you both for elaborating. I think it's definitely admirable, right? So the context in which you're working. I mean, not all the people that at least are part of the project, they also focus that much on food behavior, for example. It differs a bit per city. But yeah, I think one of the reasons is that it's so challenging for these many deep-rooted issues that you're clarifying. I think we have time for one final question. It's also one posted on a Jamboard. Someone's asking, can you elaborate on the barriers to access finance to implement projects for more sustainable food production and consumptions? So maybe from your own perspectives, I know also the FUSILLI project, for example, FUSILLI project is coming to an end. Maybe from your own experience, like, do you have barriers on this access to finance for implementing future projects? Or the future of the projects that you presented?
Well, Emira, is it okay if I go with it?
Yeah, just go.
Okay, I'll give this. Yes, because it's not mainstream. So we have to convince, and even not the city of Athens necessarily, even, NGOs. We need to convince different institutions that either in terms of social impact, which in Greece is not really developed. So in Greece, we don't have social impact financing. And this leaves the potential of financing such projects like changing our nutrition. It leaves them a bit behind. With the great picture that we need to change our nutrition in order to change our food system with all its dimensions, which is economy to society to environment, and many more. They seem to, sometimes funding institutions believe that this is too generic. It has to be really particular. You have to find a group of interest, a stakeholder that has a need, that you go to satisfy this need, and it goes into a philanthropy stream mostly, rather than a social change one. So this is a barrier, because philanthropy usually focuses on, satisfying a need rather than initiating social change and achieving our desires.
Yeah.
So this is something that can become a barrier to see also the mentality of finance.
Yeah. Thank
you.
There is
a sense, and this can happen.
Thanks. Emira, from your perspective?
So I don't think there's barriers in sense of the availability of funding. I think there's a lot of funding available at this moment, but the issue of a lot of the funding is focused on research projects, scientific projects and research projects, and a lot more into implementation of solutions, whether it's a social impact or whatever it is. And in my opinion, I think a lot harder it is to actually write a project and find the right partners so that the solution that is being developed is actually going to be implemented. Because a lot of the times in EU-funded projects, we see this in Croatia all the time, the project is sort of there for itself. The purpose of a project is to have the project, and then the results you've satisfied the projects, and then there's no continuation, even if the financing could be accessed. If you understand what I mean, sort of the focus of the project is not actually implementing the solution; it's just, getting funding. Yeah. So in that case, maybe more serious, getting more serious stakeholders, more adamant stakeholders who will see something through then into reality, actually. So that could be a barrier, I think.
Yeah. Interesting, because they make these they make these ambitions also quite concrete and conditioned on this funding, right? So like you're saying, it depends sometimes on the scale. I've heard many people in different kinds of initiatives to more or less degrees they struggle with funding, but like in some cases there's just so much time going into finding new funding that it's significantly taking away time from working on the continuation of something.
Exactly, and very often the project, unfortunately, sometimes the city administration changes, and sometimes one city administration doesn't really see some projects as important as some others, and you really have an issue with the continuation of whatever you're trying to develop or implement or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your presentations and from participating in these conversations. We will share your names at least with the audience, but at the end of the day, we'll also say if anyone would like to reach out to you sitting here or would like to ask some further questions, you can send an email to us later, and then we'll get you in contact. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to slowly introduce the final part of today. I wanted to take stock before we move into that final part. Wanted to take stock of what happened what we talked about in the last 2 hours. First, we were trying to contextualize, saying, okay, what is this about, right? We're trying to critically reflect on change that is already happening, and to understand what kind of things are needed for systemic change. Talking about these roots, talking about derouting, talking about how that might be difficult, or what might be possible in an institutional context. Then we came to the presentations that I think many of the things that Emma was talking about in sometimes a bit more theoretical way also became a bit more concrete, right? So you're talking from your own experiences working here in this project and working with municipalities. Right now, I mean, we've already seen, maybe we already said, maybe it's because it's summer, maybe it's because this plenary session doesn't facilitate it enough. But we wanted to ask you to engage in a more small scale, intimate discussions to talk about these topics further. And to also talk from our own experiences. So we're going to take a short break. Online settings might require that, so I'm going to put on some music. I think we'll do about 5 to 10 minutes and see you back at 12 o'clock. And after that, we're going to shortly introduce what the goal of these sessions will be a bit further, and then we're going to be in small group sessions of about 5-6 people for the final hour. Yeah, I think the nicest thing to say about this is that we're going to talk further about this idea of radicalization. The Mentimeter that Emma shared already gave some insight in that. At first, maybe we thought it wasn't that interesting, and maybe we thought, okay, we're now a bit more positive about this idea. And yeah, if we want to take it a step further, like, what does it mean to become radicalized? Maybe we have a very uncomfortable feeling still towards this concept. Maybe some of us really don't want to be any more radical, and that's also completely okay. So we want to uncover a bit what are challenges that relate to this idea of radicalization. So yeah.
We have just very shortly a short question for Emira. What could be best, just maybe before we go into what could be the best way of municipalities to use the information coming from their web application?
The question in the thing.
Yeah, that was the question I actually asked. This is the question that we are asking ourselves at the moment. Yeah. This was yes, because well, obviously, having insight into how people treat food waste and how they produce food waste can give us much more insight to our utility company that is dealing with food waste. Maybe be more prepared to see maybe some incremental periods of the year where there is more food waste produced, or periods I suppose during the holidays or something like that, to be more prepared. So that is sort of like a functional thing that we can use. But also I think in mostly in educating people, to tell them, okay, so citizens of Rijeka, you're using this application for 3 months now. Here is how much food waste you have produced. I think education and awareness raising actually could be the best use for the statistics, except from those, of course, that we're going to use as how much actual food waste we're going to be receiving to the landfill.
Cool, thank you. Great. I'm just gonna share the slides. There we go, and then I'm gonna put on the music. It's Brazilian, so it's very relaxing. All right. Welcome back, everyone. So hope everyone's still there. Hope everyone had a tea, went to the toilet. Great. I'm just gonna quickly introduce what the idea is, and then in your smaller groups, you'll be explained by the moderators in more detail. Just to give a bit of background, this next hour is going to consist of a semi-facilitated group conversation in small groups of about 5 people, and we're going to use kind of a methodology that is coming from public administration research, but also kind of the NGO world. It's a learning methodology in which a group is supported to support each other, let's say. So in small groups, we're gonna share experiences that relate to this idea of being radical and things that we might find difficult in doing so, or difficult in relation to it. After which there will be a core round in which we're gonna try to gossip about, how do you say that? Gossip about things that we find interesting about what someone's presenting, things that we find intriguing, things that we would do differently. And we have a whole way of guiding you through that process. Last year we did it as well during the Feeding Cities conference, and it's quite a nice way to give advice to one another and to come to shared experiences, even though we are far apart across the world in this digital space. We hope it's gonna be interesting for you. I'm looking at Kanesia, if you're there. To distribute in the breakout rooms, I wanted to suggest to have David, me, Ella, and Marjoleine. So 4 breakout rooms, and then each with at least 5 people. I don't know I think Emira and Giorgos also you can join. I don't know if Alp you want to join, or you yourself as well can join, but at least with us 4 as moderators, and then the rest randomly distributed. Is that okay?
Yes, that is fine. You would like 4 rooms, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we already have them set up.
Amazing.
We just take another second to open it up, and we'll send you to them.
Amazing, thank you.
Yes, so Nida, could you open up the rooms?
All right.
Sorry for the interruption, everyone.
No worries, no worries, no
We're
worries.
still there.
Amazing.
Hello again.
Hello. Amazing. Great. I see most of us are back, right? Cool. Well, we're almost out of time as well. We have a couple minutes left. Maybe it's nice to share. I mean, we had a whole conversation about very big things that also affect us personally in different ways in our group. Maybe it's nice to share 1, 2 takeaways if people would like to share. I'm just looking at the other groups as well. Marlene, David, Ella.
You can start, I think.
Cool. I mean, yeah, I think we had we were not that big of a group. We had a very chill conversation, if I speak so freely. But the nice thing was that we had 2 of us that had a same issue. We were talking about radicalization, and the challenge was that it's a really nice concept that can really help. Oh, I hear my camera is off. It's a really nice concept that stimulates our thinking, and it's important for systemic change, but also it has a lot of negative connotation, especially in a wider societal setting, and it can lead to kind of fanatism or extremism, or that's also what's associated with it. And then we had this gossiping conversation. Alp brought in the challenge. He was struggling with something. And then I wrote down a couple of things that are important when you think about radicalizing, or when you talk about radicalization for system change. One was radicalization should not be about something that is in fashion, but it should be something that benefits the majority of people. Food poverty doesn't make a division in social classes, which was Elizabeth was saying. Second point was that radicalization has negative connotations, but maybe it's important to think about radical thinking as a form of critical thinking. So thinking about stuff in their root causes, and as a form of finding out what are the norms, and then challenging norms. It's also something Emma said in her presentation. And then the fourth point that came along was that radicalization or radical thinking might also require solidarity, but there was also quite a lot of emphasis on empathy, that we feel in different tendencies in society and different tendencies related to working in these projects, also in food system projects. There's not always empathy to understand one another's perspectives, and that even on an individual basis, the experience of these systemic changes are so subjective. That a lot maybe is lost in translation. Well, this was just as a summary as I could do it, but yeah, Marlene, David, or someone that shared something or else.
I wanted to
I
wait.
think you really summarized very well.
Glad.
David, do you want to summarize, or I don't know what you?
Yeah, as you want. We also spoke about the concept of radical. What does it mean, and the negative connotation that maybe should be thought about, so people actually understand what it is, because it's the way it's used in general is negative. So it's associated with something bad, no? And if you want to use this word, which is not absolutely necessary, but it's fine, but we need to also work on that understanding of what that means and what it can mean and should mean. that was kind of a starter, and then we had an interesting challenge and a taboo theme brought up about, okay, what happens to people with these under these potential radical changes? No, if you change things, if you close down, let's say, industrial processing, or the people that are affected, like on an economic level, on their livelihoods, what happens to them? Is this being thought about? Should this be thought about more? And can we find solutions? Should we find solutions while proposing radical transformations? And so we talked about this from different angles. Yeah, Mariolina, you want to add some?
Yeah, let me see. I wrote down some keywords. So the notion of moderation in the radicalization, especially to ensure the another keyword, humanitarian perspective, when we radically change the food system, and the need to also then consider different economic realities, to help people to, another thing that came up was helping people to reinvent themselves, to find new ways to play a role in radically changed food systems. What if they were embedded very deeply in the old food system, of course, and the need to maybe also include radical economicians. So to also have economic knowledge, but then preferably not rooted in, of course, capitalist thinking.
Cool. Okay, a big diversity of topics I hear.
Yeah,
Very
just a few
cool, very
keywords.
cool. Yeah. Ella, would you like to share?
Yeah, so I think our discussion was a little bit different. It was a lot more, was just a very tangible kind of conversation. Julia, I don't know if you want to summarize, as it was your contribution. You're muted.
We land the radicalization concept into ecological products. So we talked about a real challenge we have in an eco-products organization. And well, it has been discussed the challenge, how to, they have given some advice to decrease this challenge, and also the lessons learned. And I think we summarized that it is a very big lack of awareness of citizens about local and eco products, and it is something that maybe when they hear eco, they get frightened and they go directly to another kind of products. And it is not something so much related with price, but more related with consciousness. And that's it. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Ella?
No, that's good. That's good. We just kind of discussed the challenges in that, and also some of the kind of structural barriers that they're facing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I think also looking at the time, I'm just going to wrap it up. I'm going to share my slides again with some final comments on the day and where we're going from here. Thank you for sharing, moderators and Julia. So this was the day. We had a lovely lineup of things to talk about. Before we close off, before we close off, I wanted to also point out this is the second to last public event, at least organized from our side, from me and Lara. We will have in the fall a final interactive webinar where also again 2 FUSILLI cities will come and share their experiences, and it will be a 1.5 hour long session. So if you want to keep being posted on that, you can join the FUSILLI newsletter. Also, for those of you interested, we have a final conference from our whole project coming up in Turkey, in Nilofer, which will be on Tuesday and Wednesday, 19th and 20th of November. So stay tuned. And I want to thank all the speakers, Kaneja, Nidan, Alp, and moderators as well. If you're interested, if you would like to connect to some of the speakers, in our case, there was also already some exchange of email contacts, or you would like to stay up to date, you can send an email to the following email. And thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.